So we're talking about anxiety specifically, and by extension, OCD, anger management, impulse control, etc., etc. All of these things have one thing in common: limbic brain dysfunction, or limbic brain imbalance, or overload. In our series up to this point, we've identified a couple of causes. We found out, for example, in video 3 that it all starts with desire, obviously primarily a psychological trigger, specifically nurturing the wrong desire. And then in video number 4, we discussed bondage to the wrong master, and that, of course, led us into the conversation about addictions. That was the last video. Now, addictions or addictive tendencies can stem from psychological roots or spiritual roots or neurological, chemical roots, or all of the above, all of which have different solutions. So bottom line, thus far, we've discussed mostly the problem. And it occurs to me that before we go on to explore additional causes, we should at least start the conversation about solutions. So that's going to be the goal of the next couple of videos, and then we'll circle back. But first, common question. Why did we start there? Why did I go first to desire and then go straight from there to compulsions when we have all the neurological triggers and all the psychological ones and all the spiritual triggers? Like, why did I start with desire? Okay, I could have started in many places, but we started there for two reasons. Number one, that's the deepest layer. And number two, it's also the only one over which you have total executive control without external chemical or nutritional interventions. So, for example, you might well have a copper-zinc balance problem in your brain. But addressing that, there's a barrier of entry. First, you got to find an internist or neurologist or psychiatrist that's on board, and then order labs, and then do the experimental dosing. All of that takes time and energy and money, and it won't even work if you haven't first figured out the desire and the liberty bit first. That's why we started there. So, in summary, no joy, start with desire. For some people, desire is enough. That's what's missing. Problem solved. For others, it isn't. So, still no joy? Check master. Are you at liberty or are you a slave? Where slavery is defined as any time the limbic brain takes control over the cortex, causing you to do what you don't want to do. And of course, that could look like dependency or compulsion or addiction or fear or anxiety, you name it. We must be free from bondage and from the things that would destroy us. And to do that, we must, in part, put the cortex back in charge. We've got to restore the balance in the brain. And for some people, again, this is enough. But for others, that's not where it ends either. Check desire, check your master. And then if that's not enough, check action. Because checking the slavery status ultimately translates to taking away bad stuff. It's saying no to what's harming you. But here's the question for the day. You say no to all these other things. What are you saying yes to? In the last session, we talked about the reward circuit and the role that dopamine plays as a reward chemical, of course. And we talked about how addictive activities and substances trigger the mega release of dopamine, thereby throwing off the balance of that system and reducing the sensitivity of the system, requiring higher and higher levels of stimulation next time. The solution to this problem is twofold. Stop and satisfy. Stop, we started discussing last time, we have to restrict or reduce exposure to whatever activity or substance is hyperstimulating the system. Obviously, one cannot beat an addiction while one continues partaking in that addiction. But the question is, how? And that's where we pick up today. Part 2, satisfy. I did mention last time that you cannot delete a strongly ingrained limbic loop. It is stored in emotional memory. You can only replace it. Incidentally, this is one of the reasons why so many addiction kind of recovery plans and rehab programs fail. They take away, but they do not replace. Johann Hari, in his book, Chasing the Scream, I think 2015, makes a very eloquent case for this and quotes some very interesting science, long and short. Based on this idea, he tracks the unbelievably high success rate of an addiction recovery program, a rehab program based out of Colorado, that was outdoor activities based. Participants got all the standard rehab stuff, but they also learned to move, to hike and climb and ski and raft and run and boulder and hang glide and all the things. And they did it alongside a group of other people learning the same thing. And their relapse rates were phenomenally lower than the national average, because by the time their participants left rehab, they had new hobbies, new joys, new relationships. They had something to do. They didn't need their addiction to get them the dopamine anymore. So here's the next question, the $1 million question. How do you boost dopamine in a healthy way? In the next 4 videos, the first of which we'll release with this one, we're going to go over the 4 main neurochemicals that affect mood and motivation, anxiety, depression, and connection. And we're not going to just discuss what they do. We're going to discuss how they get hijacked, how to fix it, how to regulate, how to boost levels, and how to protect them from the antagonists. In other words, we're learning to say no to a bunch of garbage over here. Say yes to this instead. Here's the 4. Sneak peek. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. You've probably heard of some or all. In brief, dopamine is responsible for motivation and reward, thus affecting learning and behavior. We've already kind of dabbled into that one. Number 2, oxytocin. This is the connection and bonding chemical. It's the reason why you stick to your friends and loved ones. And it's often also the reason why friendships and relationships fail. Number 3, serotonin. That's the mood and energy chemical. If you're after confidence, this is your secret sauce. Also, if your sleep is off, this one might be part of the problem. And then lastly, endorphins. These things make you invincible. They lower pain threshold and inflammation. They make you happy and brave. They make your problems seem small and your strength seem more than adequate. So, buckle up. This is where it gets fun.